All right, and it's 4. I know we're going to have more people join, but we want to welcome everybody tonight, this afternoon, wherever you are, what time it is. I know we have people from around the world. We're so honored to have the one and only Peter Greenlaw join us. He's a lot of brilliance behind some of the things we've been doing with the Shred protocol. He's got his own name for that. But I want to give a disclaimer. First of all, the following content is for informational and educational purposes only. We're not trying to replace medical advice, and any of the stories or results are those of the particular person, and they can vary depending on lifestyle changes and a lot of factors that we're going to discuss today. So Peter Greenlaw has worked tirelessly with the world's leading oncologists, medical doctors, molecular biologists, geneticists, nutritional formulators, and researchers. And I didn't get tongue-tied. That was quite easy to get tongue-tied on that. But we're just honored to have him here today. Driven by his own health crisis and losing a loved one to cancer, I believe that was part of your impetus, Peter, to jump in to dig so deeply. And just for everyone on the call, we've all been through a couple of years and we've all got some things in our lives. And just to reframe and realize that sometimes those caves and those difficulties can be lead us to the very treasure we seek. And certainly in Peter's case. And so he's generously offered to be on and share with us. Would you just share it a little bit, Peter? Anything I might have left out that you want us to know in your bio, and then also how your health crisis led you along this journey.
Yeah, that's a great opening. Thank you very much. That tongue ties me too. I had a publicist that wrote all that stuff. So I just go, really? That's me? Well, a couple of things I want to tell everybody. Number one, I am referred to as the researcher of the researchers. And the reason I tell you that is, I will tell you right up front, I'm not the expert. But I became an expert on the experts. As Pamela said, I feel so blessed, privileged that I was able to befriend some of the top oncologists, medical doctors, geneticists, molecular biologists, and nutraceutical chemists in the world. And what they taught me is nothing short of mind-boggling. So everything that I will share to you today is not Peter Greenlaw's opinion. It's not my research. It's their research. And it's so important that you all understand that what we now know, unfortunately, is completely opposite of everything we ever thought we knew about nutrition, diet, and particularly even exercise. And so what these people taught me was amazing. But to give you my brief story, so 19 and a half years ago, I walked to my doctor's office and he said to me, if you don't do something radically different today, when you walk out of here for my physical, he said, you're going to be dead in 18 months. My cholesterol was 400. Wow. My heart attack risk was the chance of a heart attack was 85 out of 100, and I was 40 pounds overweight. And I did the traditional, my doctor diet, exercise, and Lipitor, the drug they give you for high cholesterol. And after 8 weeks, I go back for my blood work. I lost 8 pounds. That was pretty typical on a diet. That's what I knew in those days. But my cholesterol only came down about 15 points. And he said, look, I can't give you any more medication. And a friend of mine who played professional football for the Oakland Raiders is the one that turned me onto the concept of detox. I went on it. I lost 8 pounds in 48 hours. I lost 12 pounds in 9 days, 20 pounds in 18 days, 40 pounds in 7 weeks. Go back to my doctor for blood work. And he comes running and throws my chart down. He says, Peter, are you trying to kill yourself? I said, what are you talking about? He said, we need to retest you. I said, why? He said, why? Your cholesterol's gone from 400 to 120. Your heart attack risk gone from 85 to 15, and you lost 40 pounds. There's no medical explanation for this. And I said to myself, if this is real, it's going to change the world. And then I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I say destiny. The very next day, a friend of mine who was a gastroenterologist, I ran into. I hadn't seen her for like 2 months. And she was acting strange. She went to me. She says, oh my God, Peter, are you sick? I said, what are you talking about? She said, do you have cancer? Because I'd lost 40 pounds, in about 7 weeks. And I told her what I was doing. And she said, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? She said, I'm now treating all my gastrointestinal patients with this same detox that you did. The man that invented is coming to Denver in 2 weeks. There'll be 20 doctors there. Come and tell you a story. So I figured out a free dinner. I'm going to go. I went and I told my story. And then the chemist who was there, who invented all this, he pulled me to the side and said, look, I want to talk to you after dinner. And I said, okay. So he pulls me aside and he said, look, he said, I know that I've invented something's going to change the world. And he points at me and goes, and I need someone like you to tell the world about it. And I go, well, that's great, except we got one big problem. He said, what's that? I said, heck, I don't even know what a calorie is. He said, we'll teach you. And that's how it started. So 500 books later, 10,000 hours of research, 2 million miles on United pre-COVID. And so I started to meet these people. And you've got to understand that 19.5 years ago, there'd never been a study done on a human being if we were storing chemicals in our body. It had never been done. So this is 2003, and it wasn't until late 2005 where Mount Sinai Medical School in New York did the first study ever, finding out that we were storing herbicides and pesticides in our body. And that kind of was that blew the dam open. By that time, I'd already started lecturing about this because I kept saying to everybody, why is nobody talking about this? I liken it to cigarettes. Now, you have to understand that with cigarettes, you smoked, it didn't cause lung cancer the next day. It took years for that to begin to show up. And I believe now we have the evidence that storing these chemicals in our fat cells is really having a negative impact on our lives, on our weight, on our energy, on our, just our overall state of life, And so that's kind of it's kind of a long answer, Pam, but I'm me, I'm very, I talk a lot, but it's only that I want you to all understand how this came about and why it's so, I just was at the frontier. I was at the very, very first when anybody was even considering. As a matter of fact, I'll share one more story. One of the first people that befriended me was Dr. Doris Rapp, and she'd written the first book ever on toxins. It was called Our Toxic World. She's a medical doctor with 5 degrees. So she was like a pediatrician, obstetrician, internist, allergist, whatever. And her book focused mainly on the massive increase in allergies in children. And she pinpointed and proved it was because of the herbicides and pesticides they were spraying on the grass and that these kids were playing in. And I spent a week with her, and she just so opened my eyes. She'd been on Oprah 20 times. She's really famous. And she just took me and said, you just call me Sonny. She goes, Sonny, I'm going to teach you some things. I said, well, I'm here to learn. And she just said, look, I think that what you can do is your focus should be, what's going on with these toxins way beyond allergies. And so I sort of pioneered that with the help of some really, really smart people. That's why I'm telling all of you, I'm not the expert, but I became an expert on the experts. And that's what I'd like to share with all of you today.
Well, and that's such an advantage because you don't just have one perspective. You've worked with so many across the board in the cutting edge areas, which makes your perspective so valuable and so unique. So the toxicity, you're kind of referring to perhaps your book, the TDOS, toxicity, deficiency, obesity, and stress. And you actually trademarked that term, and that is really what's been going on. And I know you utilize a variety of products, but I know that a lot of us here are using some of the isogenics, which you recommend as well with your protocol on that. Would you just speak to that a little bit and what you discovered that is part of what we're doing with the shred, bumping up the usual 9-day to the 11-day to incorporate your 48-hour detox regimen?
Right. So yeah, that's a good question. So what kind of happened, so I had this incredible life-saving event. I didn't know anything about this, okay, even though I met the chemist that had invented it, which is what you guys are all using. But what was so interesting is that I was able to work with these world-class experts, and they'd say to me, well, this is the problem. Our food is nutritionally bankrupt. I'll give you 3 quick examples. If we took an orange from 30 years ago, today, that same orange, you got to eat about 8 oranges to equal the nutrition, not the calories. An apple, about a dozen, and a big study at Cornell University on spinach from 1953 to today, you'd have to eat approximately 40 bowls of spinach to equal 1 bowl in 1953. So that was something. So again, they identified. And so then, of course, I said, as a layperson, well, what are we deficient in? They said the number one thing we're deficient in are minerals. And you've all heard of iron, calcium, magnesium, but there's actually 70 minerals that we need. We need gold and silver and zincs and molybdenum from Leadville, not too far from where I am right now, and zinc and all these and trace elements is 70. Well, in the best organic food, and some of you, I'm going to probably make you all mad before I'm done, but I don't care. I mean, I do, but I don't. In the best organic food, you have about 15 minerals out of 70. So this whole notion, before COVID, when I was giving, 4 lectures, I've done 1,500 all over the world, but I haven't been live now in 26 months. And I would start out and I'd say to everybody, listen, food will never be enough again, period. So the whole concept of eating healthy, good luck with that. So the scientists, they pointed out to me, they said, this is what we're lacking. And so it just so happened that this company made, the man that invented it had discovered this deposit of minerals back in the 70s in Nevada and got the first patent on the consumption of minerals for human beings. I mean, I didn't know this when I met him even. This is what I learned. And then these geniuses were telling me this. And then they said the other thing that we're the most deficient in are amino acids. Hell, I wouldn't have known an amino acid from an astronaut, but I learned. So I'm going to give you all a quick lesson here. So first of all, this will sound like a dichotomy. So a protein, whether it comes from an animal or it comes from a vegetable, they all contain 20 amino acids. Now, to give you all an idea, you will remake the lining of your stomach twice this month. You'll remake your livers twice this year, and you'll remake pretty much every cell in your body almost about once every 7 years. The only way that occurs, not with fats, not with carbs, and not with the protein itself. It only happens because of the amino acids. So you're going to say, some of you might be vegan, and I'm just going to, again, I'm going to make you mad, but I'm just going to give you the science, okay? So any protein you ingest, you've got all 20 amino acids. So you think, done, that's great. Well, no, it's not. So there's a new scientific evaluation. It's called net nitrogen utilization. In layman's terms, what it means is they can take any protein you ingest, and through stool and urine and saliva samples, they can measure what's the percentage of the 20 that's being used by our genes to make human proteins. To tell you how important protein is, you have 22,000 genes and the body makes 22,000 proteins, but it only can make it with an amino acid, with nothing else. So you're saying, oh, I'm great, I'm vegan, or I eat grass-fed beef or whatever, it's terrific. You have all 20, but here's the problem. A protein itself is a poison to your body. It actually is a toxin. And what's not converted into amino acids is turned into toxic waste. Urea, that's what you get when you get gout, creatine, ammonia, and believe it or not, glucose or sugar, okay? So they ran analysis on vegetable proteins. Now, this is a single vegetable, like a pea protein, a rice protein, chia seeds, I don't care what it was. The absorption of a single vegan protein was 10% out of 100. 90% is turned into toxic waste that your kidneys have to deal with. Now, there are vegan formulas. The one that you guys have available, the non-dairy, it actually has 3 or 4 different vegetable proteins that ups its absorption or the utilization to about 30%, equal to animal proteins. Animal proteins across the board, steak, chicken, fish, liver, salmon, I don't care what it is, maximum absorption, 30%. The highest absorption of anything that we can eat is an organic egg at about 40%, okay? But you have to understand, you can't live without amino acids. And your body cannot use, they're called endogenous proteins, a fancy word for proteins that come from outside the body. Your body must make our proteins. And proteins do all kinds of things. They carry nutrition and oxygen. And I mean, it's crazy what they do. And we make 22,000 of them, but you only make it with amino acids. Now, why is this so important to you? Because I'm going to tell you now an earth-shaking thing. And this was a huge part of E.R. Shred, which they adopted the science. It wasn't my science. So my colleague, his name is Dr. his name is Dr. Marco Ruggiero. He's Italian. He's one of the top oncologists in the world, and he's also a molecular biologist. And we wrote a very, well, I'm going to say, it's a pretty famous book called Your Third Brain. Not a trick title, not science fiction, the real deal. And of course, I would encourage any of you to get that book because it will blow your mind. But at the time when we wrote it about 5 years ago, he was living in Italy at the time, and he came over to the United States in August. And we spent a whole month together writing the book, but we also were going to oncology centers in Chicago and in the Midwest and in California, visiting cancer doctors because he's world famous. Okay. And one day he saw me making the very shake that most of you are consuming. And he said, can I have a canister of that? And I said, sure. I had no idea what he was going to do. Well, unbeknownst to me, he took that shake, which is the Isoline Pro. That's what he did the analysis on. And then he went to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and bought 19 other really popular undenatured whey protein shakes and ran this analysis. So first he took all 20 shakes and he made them in cold water and he tested them after 5 minutes. Some of the national brands, the absorption of those 20 amino acids was as low as 5% out of 100. 5, meaning 95% is basically toxic waste your kidneys have to deal with. Now, the Isoline Pro that you guys, that's what I mainly recommend because that's what he did in the study. That in cold water after 15 minutes registered an absorption, the net nitrogenization of 15%. It was the highest, but only 15%. Hell, I've been taking it for 15 years at that point and it saved my life. So I'm not saying if you want to make it in cold water, go for it, okay? But he also did an analysis on the non-dairy, and that's how I know that it was 30%. But he was primarily focusing on the whey proteins, okay? Then he did something strange, and this is the game changer for everybody doing ER shred, including, Sean Escobar, who could not tolerate the shake, and I'll explain that to you why. So then he took all 20 shakes, he made them in a blender in 100-degree water, he blended them, he took the lids off and he let them sit for 45 minutes. That's called incubation. He taught me this. I didn't know any of this. At the end of that 45 minutes, he retested all 20 shakes. The funny part or the interesting part was 19 out of 20 of the shakes, whatever the number was, if it was 5 or 8, there were a couple at 10, there was one at 12, it didn't change. Well, wait a minute. He made them, because you see, the shake, the Isoline Pro, went from an absorption of 15% to 90%, the highest absorption of any protein ever tested on planet Earth. But a couple more things, and this is why people are not having a problem that we're having a problem digesting it. All the whey protein, all the casein protein, all the milk protein was gone. You literally, what you started with 45 minutes ago was no longer a shake. You were essentially drinking almost pure liquid amino acids. The other thing that happened was it lowered the sugar by 30%. So just to let you know, incubating the non-dairy won't help you. It's a completely different formula, but because it has multiple vegan proteins, you're going to get it up to 30%, but only 30, no higher than that, okay? So why is this so important? Well, if our body relies on amino acids to remake ourselves, do you think it would be better to access 15%, or in the case of, the non-dairy or the animal proteins, 30% or 90%? But the other part is the 90% only accounts for a tiny amount of waste that the body easily can deal with, 10%. Now, that's the other part of deficiency. The minerals, which are in pretty much everything, all 70, by the way, along with this incubation process. By the way, at the end of 45 minutes, you want to reblend the shake, you can add ice, and you can drink it cold. But that's a game changer. That's why people are having these extraordinary, crazy results.
No.
No, does someone have a question? Someone said no, I don't know. But anyway, to make a long story short, that becomes the essence of everything. Now, let me go a little bit deeper. So in a COVID world we're living in, again, this is what I was taught. So the human body makes this really powerful molecule. It's called glutathione. It's made inside the cell. The body has to make it, but it makes it with 3 of the 20 amino acids, specifically cysteine, glutamate, and glycine. Those are 3 of the 20 amino acids. You don't have to remember this, but here's what you want to remember, that the body, because of those 3 amino acids, is able to make glutathione. Now, what does glutathione do? Its number one function, massively increases your immune system. And it's deadly on toxins. Those very toxins that we know in the research we're storing in our fat cells. And I'll talk about that in just a moment. But I want you to get the concept here that deficiency is such a big deal for all of us. And if you can, and this is what the scientists taught me, that when this formula, there was the 70 minerals. Oh, by the way, you're probably all asking, wait a minute, all 20 shakes were in the warm water and they said for 45 minutes. What was the game changer? Why did the Isolene Pro go to 90%? Because it contains 5 enzymes. They're right on the label. They're called proteases. And how did Dr. Ruggiero know about this? Well, again, this is pretty amazing. He'd worked with Sir John Vane of England in 1983, who won the Nobel Prize in Medicine for his work on enzymes. And so he knew when he saw those enzymes on the label, he knew those enzymes only were activated in warm water over time. When you made them in cold water, they were inert. That's why it was only 15%. But you make them in the warm water and you let it incubate for the 45 minutes, it goes to 90% because the enzymes literally are extracting those amino acids in massive amounts. And again, if your body is relying on amino acids to remake yourself, including boosting your immune system, is there anyone that doesn't think that 90% of the absorption would not be beneficial to you as a human being? Well, of course, you know. But I don't want to, if you want to make it in cold water, that's great. If you want to use the non-dairy, that's okay. But understand it's only 30%. And it's not me, it's not my research. The science is clear. It says whey protein is the best thing you could ever put in your body to increase your immune system. That's independent, that's nothing to do. But also understand, even for those that might have, a lot of people with whey protein have a casein allergy. And the casein is one of the proteins. So a whey protein contains whey, casein, and milk protein. But you have to understand, they're all but eliminated. And I tell people all the time, nothing's 100%. But normally, I mean, people that could not down the shakes, the whey protein, are now no problem. You probably, if you're in ER Shred and you look at the testimonials, person after person after person said that. So that was really my contribution to the whole thing. And the reason that ER Shred works is you essentially are assisting your own body by eliminating carbohydrates to allow your body then to go through the detox phase. And I'll explain all that in just a moment. So here's what I did discover. And as Pam said, I have a registered trademark of a new medical syndrome called TDOS. So maybe some of you have heard of metabolic syndrome or syndrome X, which are basically a combination of different elements that when they come together, they do really bad things to us, okay? And that's the same way with TDOS. And so TDOS is toxicity, nutritional deficiency, obesity, and stress. But keep in mind the D in deficiency is really where the problem lies, okay? And I'm going to explain to you the biochemistry behind what happens on the 48 hours. Why does that occur? Why is it 48 hours? Why isn't it 24 hours? I'm going to do all that in a moment, but I want you all to understand there's now more than 1,000, probably more like 1,500 studies estimating that the average person on this call would have between 1,000 and 2,000 chemicals embedded in what's called our visceral fat. So you have your outer layer of fat, that's what's called adipose or subcutaneous. That's another fancy word for it. And then the underlying fat called visceral fat is what surrounds our organs. And unfortunately, that's where the body is storing these toxins. It makes sense because the visceral fat is our last line of defense. And we're evolving as a species to store these chemicals inside our body. The immune system can't deal with herbicides and pesticides and Roundup and Scotch Guard and Teflon. I'll tell you how bad it is. There was a big study 8 months ago. They now have proven that everybody on this call, everybody in North America is eating the equivalent of a credit card per week in plastic.
Wow.
In these microparticles, every one of us. Now, the bad part about a plastic is what makes it flexible is called a phthalate. And phthalate's not friendly to human beings. In women, it massively increases estrogen. And in a big study they just published from 1973 to 2000, they've now said that the sperm count in men in North America has decreased by 50% in that time frame. And the primary cause is the incidence of phthalates. Well, thank God this detox not only removes normal toxins and PCBs, but also these phthalates. So that's an incredibly powerful thing. I tell people all the time, don't do this to lose weight. That's the wrong reason. All of us need to wake up to the fact. If we don't detox, it's kind of like cigarette smoking. Let me know how that turns out in the long run. maybe you're going to luck out. But that's too risky for, I think, anybody I care about or anybody I coach or anybody that follows me. And again, it's not Peter Greenlaw saying this. This is the evidence. It's overwhelming. This is what's going on to all of us. We're storing these chemicals. And see what all the people are doing. They're taking a round peg. They're trying to put it in a square hole. So what do? They get a bigger hammer. They hit it harder. But that round peg, see, in scientific discovery, that's what's so cool. Unless you understand the magnitude of a problem, how do you solve it? So TDOS, if you can't attack, and not everybody just on this call, every living, breathing person in the world has TDOS syndrome. You can't not have it. I'll give you an example. So Teflon, that we've all heard of, or PFOAs, it's another fancy name for the chemicals in it. Do you know that they're now estimating that 99% of the people in the world have measurable Teflon in their bodies? 99% of the world population, let alone plastics now and all these other things. Now you can do whatever you want after this call. You can go to Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers, whatever. Good luck, because the data with those guys is after 26 weeks, because I did an analysis. The average weight loss on all those programs after 26 weeks was 13 pounds. A half a pound a week. We got people losing a pound a day, as you know, on ER Shred and also the other protocols that I teach. I mean, it's just like crazy. It's like, whoa, what's going on? Well, what's going on is they don't understand the problem. Because again, almost every diet is somehow Weight Watchers gives you points. It's all just a nonsense way of counting calories. And all the old webs tell, calories in, calories out, that's how you lose weight. No, that's completely wrong. And now both UCLA and University of Minnesota have come out and said unequivocally that diets in the long run hurt us. The only thing you lose on a diet is lean muscle, and that slows your metabolism down. So now when you go back to eating normally, what happens is your body slows, it's got less ability to burn calories, you gain all your weight back. That's the yo-yo, but that's what causes it scientifically. This stuff makes me crazy and I'll tell you how crooked the diet industry is. I don't want anybody to believe me, but just let your own lion eyes tell you. The next time you see Mary Osmond on the TV with the Nutrisystem commercial with the before picture, freeze frame your television. Because down in the bottom in little white letters, it actually says under each of those testimonials, the people in this commercial lost their weight on a previous program. What? Yeah, it's right there in black and white. I can't make this stuff up. I mean, that's what's so great about it. See, I love science. You know why? Because it has no emotion. It has no agenda. It just is. And when you look at that kind of data and you see that people are going 26 weeks and they're losing 13 pounds, I mean, come on. Plus, none of those diet companies have ever done what's called a peer-reviewed clinical study. Really important. I want you all to understand the difference. So you can do a study that you publish, okay? And guess what? If you do the study, you can control the outcome. If it's bad, you don't publish it. But in a peer-reviewed studies, you're exposed to the world because you do the study and then you have to send it out to other medical doctors or PhDs. That's what it means to be peer-reviewed. Well, guess what? If you're a company doing a peer-reviewed study, you're terrified because if those results don't turn out, they get published. And that's why they won't do it. Because all these diets are huge failures. Plus dieting, it has no impact on visceral fat and toxins in our body. We have the clinical evidence proving that this is shrinking the visceral fat and removing the PCBs and the toxins from the body, period. That's why you want to do this. But let me go a little bit deeper and explain to you about the whole concept. And by the way, I know a lot of you refer to this as a cleanse. I'm going to blow your world up. It never was a cleanse. It isn't a cleanse. It's intermittent nutritional fasting. Now, self-serving for me, I actually own the trademark now in intermittent nutritional fasting. But honest to gosh, that's actually what it is.
So
it's not a cleanse. Yeah,
I don't want to interrupt, but just I want people to know the difference because we've all been hearing so much about intermittent fasting, and you shared some research that actually isn't effective in detoxing. We need the minerals to detox, and I know you're going to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference between intermittent fasting and intermittent nutritional fasting. So let's deal with intermittent fasting. It comes in two versions in sheep's clothing. Number one, you basically drink water and lemon. You're not having really any food at all. And they do it for 24, 48, 72 hours, okay? The other one is what's called time restricted, where basically you don't eat for 16 hours and then you eat over 8 hours. Well, and again, I'm going to just tell you the research. So University of California, Santa Barbara, they did a study on this, the time released or intermittent nutritional fasting based on eating and not. This is someone who was doing it, who conducted the study. And at the end of the study, he said, oh my God, I was completely wrong. This doesn't work at all. Because now what we know, it's so important that we have a longer than an 8-hour window when we consume things. We really, my colleague, he actually has a trademark on what's called protein pacing, which is eating food really more like over a 12-hour span, not 8 hours. And the not eating for 16 hours does nothing for you based on the research, okay? Now, intermittent nutritional fasting is major difference. Because here's how the body works. So last night when you all slept, or for some of you, it's getting towards night already. Tonight, when you go to sleep, once you go to sleep, your body, if you didn't eat too late, and that's one of the big downsides to people that, in Europe, they have dinner at 10 o'clock at night. They don't understand how bad it is for them. Sorry about that. But basically what happens is your body, in order to turn on the detox mechanism, you have to suspend the digestive tract. So when we sleep, we're done hopefully digesting food that maybe we ate at 8 o'clock at night. So we go to sleep, we have that whole 6 or 8 hours for the body to detox, repair, regenerate. And that's the only time actually the body produces growth hormone, which is another bad thing because I know a lot of people are getting, injections of growth hormone. The problem with that is the minute you get the injection, your body stops making it. The same thing in women with, hormone replacement therapy, in particular DHEA, which is the underlying, which makes all the other hormones in the body. But the minute you give that to a woman, your body stops making it. So that's just the science. I don't have an opinion because that's what the science says, okay? So the key is that in intermittent fasting or intermittent nutritional fasting, this is really what goes on. So you're suspending your digestive tract on intermittent fasting because you're drinking water and lemon, so there's no food at all. But on intermittent nutritional fasting, what you've done by having the aloe vera, the snack, the accelerator, et cetera, you have very little food and you've lowered the threshold enough that for in all intents and purposes, your body thinks you're done kind of digesting. So what happens in both intermittent fasting and intermittent nutritional fasting, it takes about 22 hours for your body to burn through the sugar stored in our liver. That's called glycogen. At the end of that 22 hours, your body only has two things left for fuel. My right hand is muscle and my left hand is fat. Well, on intermittent fasting, because you got no nutrition, your body ignores the fat and burns the muscle. This is the detrimental part to fasting or like these really low calorie diets, because the body, when it's in starvation mode for nutrition, not for calories, you can't burn fat. It's a medical impossibility, okay? On intermittent fasting, and I'm going to teach you a new term. When you do your shakes the first, let's say 2 days before you do detox, what you're really doing is a new term for all of you. It's called nutritional partitioning. It sounds really fancy, but all they're basically saying is there's so much nutrition because of those shakes that you're not using it all in that 48 hours. So you really have it stored. Think of it like in a warehouse. So remember, I said you got to suspend your digestive tract, right? So when you're going on a detox day and you're just doing, the 4 servings of the aloe vera and the little snacks and the accelerator, et cetera, you're about 340 calories. But here's the key. The body, because it's got this warehouse over here, it's already been digested. You've already digested the protein, et cetera. So the body just goes over there and captures that nutrition, but it doesn't involve the digestive tract, if that makes sense to everybody. So now, even though you have very low calories, you have massive amounts of nutrition. So in intermittent nutritional fasting, which is proven now in the clinical studies, when it comes to the choice point, guess what it does? It ignores the muscle and burns the fat, proven in the clinical studies. There is no diet, no nutrition, no exercise program that's ever produced these results to measure the shrinkage of the visceral fat, the removal of the toxins, and even more importantly, lowering inflammation. They're called biomarkers. The two things in science for inflammation are C-reactive protein, interleukin-1, which both went down dramatically on intermittent nutritional fasting. On intermittent fasting, your body's in starvation mode. And there are people that do it 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. All they're doing is burning up their muscle mass. I mean, my God, there's a disease. As a matter of fact, some of you know, you're old enough to remember Karen Carpenter. I mean, she had anorexia. She literally, and what the body does, it went through all the muscle, then it went through all the fat, and then the body, it's called catabolic metabolism. Literally, it started to eat her heart for fuel. And she died of a heart attack. But her body was eating her heart. That's why it's called catabolic metabolism, kind of like cannibalism, but doing it to ourselves. So in some sense, when you go on one of these fasts with just water and lemon, now the first 22 hours, you're good. But anything beyond that, you're doing real damage to your body. But we also know this is happening on diets. Because again, diets, it's crazy. They're lowering the calories and they've never ever discussed what? Well, what about the nutrition? Well, wait a minute. If it took 8 oranges, a dozen apples, and 40 bowls of spinach, how would going on a diet, whether it's Nutrisystem, Jenny Craig, those prepackaged things, or you just do it yourself, when you lower those calories, you're also already giving your body stuff that's nutritionally bankrupt. So what does your body do? It freaks out and goes into starvation mode and stops any hope you have for burning fat. That's why this is so effective. This is why it's so important that it's 48 hours, because at 22 hours, that's when your body's going to switch. And actually, when you first started, everybody in North America has a condition. It's called metabolic inflexibility. And all that means is we're relying on sugar and simple carbohydrates for fuel. See, we store about 2,000 calories in our body in sugar and simple carbs for an emergency. You're going to run 100 yards, you want sugar. But in fat, we store 100,000 calories, 50 times more. So what do you think our bodies we're supposed to burn? Fat. But we never get into what's called metabolic flexibility, because again, you've got to go through that process where you get rid of the sugar stored in the liver, and now the body's down to only 2 functions, muscle or fat. You want to avoid the muscle and you want to burn the fat. It's really that simple. That's what's happening on ER Shred. Now, the other good part of ER Shred is that you're basically eating meat, you got no carbs. So then on your detox days, it's even better because you have less sugar and fats and simple carbs to deal with. That's why people are having these incredible, crazy results. Now, I do a couple things that are even different than ER Shred, but we're getting the same kind of results. But again, you have to understand, we now know scientifically the carbohydrates and the simple carbs, they're not our friend. They're absolutely horrible for us. And then you have something like high fructose corn syrup. And again, this is where people get all, those shakes have fructose in it. Yeah, like in an apple, like in an orange, and they actually come from organic sugar beets. That's a whole different ballgame than high fructose corn syrup, which comes from corn, which is 20 times sweeter than regular sugar. And the body, in terms of the way the body metabolizes it, it's completely different. So what's happening with ER Shred is you're creating nutritional partitioning on those shake days, okay? That then when you go into the intermittent nutritional fasting days, you've got this extra supply that comes over and supplants the about 340 calories you have between the cleanse, the snacks, the elements you take on a detox day. So now you've got the equivalent of probably 3,000 or 4,000 calories of food if food had any nutrition at all. So that's why it's so effective and efficient for your body to take go through the glycogen in 22 hours and then switch over, turn that switch on. And now you start detoxing naturally, just like you do when you're asleep. But you see, if you tried to do this with regular food, get down to 340 calories, you're going in starvation mode. Because again, back to the 8 oranges, 12 apples, and 40 bowls of spinach. I hope this makes sense to everyone, because this really is what separates this from a scientific standpoint of view, backed up by peer-reviewed clinical studies. You know, you got to understand there's a big difference. It doesn't matter if the company is paying Skidmore College to do the study. The company has no input, none, zero. That's why peer-reviewed studies are so great, because there's no prejudice. You can't fool around. You got to have your results validated by independent sources beyond the person who did the study itself. That's why it's so fascinating. So again, back to ER Shred, the reason you're having those incredible results, you're enhancing what is naturally what you want to do in your body anyway, but because you've pretty much eliminated carbs, on your shake days, then that's why it's working so well. So again, let's come back to the TDOS syndrome. What's the most significant part of the TDOS syndrome? The D for deficiency. Well, wait a minute. We're deficient in minerals. Oh, by the way, we got all 70 minerals in the shakes and the cleanse and all that. That's good. And amino acids are the other thing we're the most deficient in. Wait a minute. Didn't we just incubate the shake and go to 90%? Do you all understand now why this works? But 50% is what you're ingesting, the fulfillment company, and the other 50% is how you're doing this. Like in the case of ER Shred, or in my protocol, which I call the R2M protocol, same difference. I mean, we're just coming at it a little bit different angles, but that's why and how it works. You could never do it with regular food, because, I mean, if you need 70 minerals and you only got 15, what's your body going to do? It's going to slow down something. The same thing with the amino acids. And, it's just science, So Pam, that's kind of like the big picture, but please, I'm more than happy if you want me to elaborate on anything else, or even if people want to ask me questions, I'm 100% open book.
Wow, that is just so amazing. I love how you just bring all that up with so many good studies and evidence. And, I was so amazed when I found this protocol, thanks to Michelle here, who's on the call, noticing, in 11 days, I lost 8.5 pounds right around my belly, which is unheard of. That's the hardest to lose, as you're saying. Right. I knew we were onto something. And then I work with clients with wellness coaching to help them recover balance and flexibility, and seeing the shifting that happens with even adding the shakes, but adding the cleanse days with the shakes is astounding. And there's so many on this call who've had great results when your body gets rid of inflammation, when it gets rid of the toxins, when it burns the fats. I've had people tell me they've never felt so good in their lives. And that's where the stories come from, which is just so fun and rewarding. And we're doing these calls right now once a month. We'll add more as we go, but just to be able to hear everybody's stories that I hear every day and that you hear, Peter, as well. Well, so and I appreciate so much.
But I want to point out one other thing, and off camera, we talked about it. There are other resources that I also use depending on the maybe medical challenges that people have. So I want you to understand that I'm neutral. I mean, honestly, the reason that I use the products that you guys are taking, because I've seen the scientific proof. I mean, I took it before I even knew anything, but once I got the scientific proof, it made me more adamant about it. And then, of course, some of the people that I worked with, they had, many of you maybe don't know this, and it's not necessarily that significant, but one of the men that I worked with is the #1 geneticist in the world who discovered the gene that causes aging. So when you're with someone like that, and there's actually a formula that you can all take called isogenesis that came out of that, me meeting him and introducing him to the chemist that invented all this stuff. So those are other things that are sort of, collateral to my research that I never really anticipated, that there were other protocols out there where people could, adjust and do various things. So that's why I never mention the name of companies. I always look at the companies as fulfillment companies. So I give people the example. If we're building a house, you got a foundation, you call Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever you have in your area, and they deliver the plywood and the roof trusses and the shingles and all that stuff to the site. But without a blueprint, you're not building a house. It's the same thing here. So I think understanding the biochemistry the blueprint that makes all this work, I think helps you to understand why you want to do it as close as possible to the book, why cheating is not an option, and why people are having these out-of-body experiences, both
Yeah,
mentally, physical,
really amazing.
it's really, yeah, it is really amazing.
And
And
it's
look, I've
helpful.
been watching it for 19 and a half years and still I'm amazed today.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's really helpful to know how it works, because I know so many people have been so disciplined and worked so hard on the other ways, lost the weight, not seen the results, getting discouraged. It's really, really hopeful and helpful for so many people. I wanted to just share along the lines of the telomeres and the aging. Chiropractor that I office with in Colorado went on the shred for wellness reasons. He lost, and I might not get these amounts exactly correct, but something like 8 pounds of fat, gained a few pounds of muscle, and took off years of cellular aging. So this is really beneficial for the long-term health. But you mentioned your study with the telomeres and the isogenesis. Can you tell us a little bit more of that story?
Yeah, that's again one of those. Was it destiny or was it coincidence? I don't know. So I was speaking in Chicago. This was in 2010, so 12 years ago, and Chicago was a really big market for me, and I had a really big event that night. And so they had a VIP thing with this lady. She had it catered, and there were going to be all these people, and they literally had a torrential rainstorm. I mean, it was crazy. Nobody showed up. So she was really disappointed, and she said, "Oh my God." I said, "We can't." No, I wasn't upset. And she said, "But have you ever heard of telomeres of Dr. Bill Andrews?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you might want to watch this DVD." So she puts her DVD in the television. It played for like, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes. And I go, "Turn that thing off." She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "What's wrong? I'm calling that guy right now." And then for the next literally 8 weeks, 5 days a week, I called his office. His name is Dr. Bill Andrews. He's the most famous geneticist in the entire world. And anyway, I finally got him on the phone, and we agreed that I was going to come, because I wanted to talk about his research and my talks, because my talks are about a lot more than just what you guys are doing. I talk about a whole host of things, right? So I flew out to Reno, Nevada, and I spent the whole day with them. And because I had, a month or so, I arranged a talk that night in Reno. And so at the end of the day, I turned to him and I said, "Listen," I said, I'd love for you to come tonight to talk about your research in my talk." And he said, "I'm way too busy." Keep in mind, it took me 8 weeks to get an appointment, so I was going to push my luck. So anyway, I was getting ready, and it was a big thing. There was an aisle, and in the very front row, one chair left. He comes in and sits down at 5 minutes to 7, and I started sweating because Einstein just walked in the room. I then did my presentation, and he came up to me afterwards and said, "Listen," he said, "there are 4 things that we've identified other than smoking that speed up aging." And I said, "They are?" And he said, "Yeah, toxicity, deficiency, overweight, and stress." Now, I hadn't got the syndrome yet. It went over my head because that's exactly what I was talking about in my lecture, but I hadn't put it together. And he said, "Listen, I'm an ultra marathon runner. And for those of you who don't know what ultra marathons are, they're a minimum of running 100 miles continuously, up to 185 miles. And he said, I don't drink, I don't smoke, I have 3 organic meals a day, and I run 81 miles a week in training. And despite that, I have 15 pounds around my middle. No matter what I do, I can't lose." And he said, "I want to do this detox." I didn't think anything of it, so I go on it. And he starts, and on day 12, he calls me up. He said, "Peter, this is Dr. Andrews. You trying to kill me?" So what are you talking about? He said, "There's no way medically anything, this is even possible." I said, "What happened?" He said, "I've lost 15 pounds in 11 days, and I want to know what in the hell's in this stuff, or you're killing me." So then I called the man who invented it, and I said to him, his name is John. I said, "John, have you ever heard of telomeres or Dr. Andrews?" He said, "No." I said, "Google him and call me back in a half hour, because I got this world-class scientist now, So I had my phone, I put it down, and maybe it was 5 minutes. My phone rings. I go, "Hello, it's John Anderson." He goes, "You get that guy on the phone right now." And we talk about that phone call, which we did a 3-way call, myself, John Anderson, and Bill Andrews, which lasted about an hour and a half. And I always say that phone call changed the world, because in case you don't know, I'm going to give you a real short version of why do we age. So we all have 46 chromosomes. 23 from the female, 23 from the man. It's called a double helix. And if you've ever seen it, it looks kind of like a slinky. It's kind of round up like that. But let's take one chromosome out of the 46 and stretch it out end to end. There are 100 million different pieces of DNA in each of your chromosomes. So that's our eye color, our hair color, our ethnicity, our health. It's all contained in there, all right? So what Dr. Andrews, he didn't discover this. A Russian scientist in 1970 determined that the end of the chromosome, they're called telomeres, that represented 15,000 on each end out of 100,000 were what caused aging. Because when we're conceived, the telomeres, we have about 15,000 on each end. By the time we're born, we have 10,000. And what the Russian scientists proved was over the course of your life, you can only lose 5,000. When you get down to 5,000, the DNA can no longer transfer. So now you have DNA from your kidney tying up with your heart. I mean, it's over, okay? And so what Dr. Andrews and his team were working on was, okay, why do the telomeres shorten at conception? And no one knew for years. And then in using a lot of Dr. Andrews' work, they awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2009 to Elizabeth Blackburn, Jack Kreider, and a third scientist who discovered in a single cell organism called an anhedra, they discovered this gene called telomerase. Well, that's what they called it, but they couldn't find it in human beings. Well, Bill Andrews and his team identified it in human beings in 6 months. And then, of course, they're telling me all this, you know. So now we're on the phone. And so at the end of the phone call, after an hour and a half, Bill Andrews says, why don't you come to my lab? So this was like early June. So we decided, the three of us, we're going to meet in Reno on July 3rd, which we did. And we spent the whole day. Now, of course, I'd already been through this, but the John Anderson, who ultimately ended up producing this incredible breakthrough, he said at the end of the day, and they'd spent, when I met them, they had spent $36 million in research trying to do what? Prevent the shortening of the telomeres or stopping it or ultimately lengthening. But they were trying to come up with a prescription drug. And they tested 225,000 drugs when I met them. And they developed a scale. Oh, I forgot one really important part for all of you, and you can Google this later. But the most famous woman in the world that I'd never heard of, and maybe some of you haven't, her name is Henrietta Lacks. She died at Johns Hopkins University back in like 1964 or 5 of cervical cancer. She was 31 years old, and they did a biopsy on her tumor. And those cells from 1964 have continued to replicate all this time. They've never aged. They just keep, and that's how the Russian scientists using her cells determined what telomeres were. I forgot to tell you that part of the story, okay? So, and her cells have been used in many of the wonder drugs we have today. Well, Dr. Andrews in his lab, they developed kind of an X and Y axis, and the top of the thing were actually her cells. At the bottom, they were taking human cells, and they could look at the human cell, and it was pretty much flatlined, where her cell, these cells were going like this because her telomeres didn't shorten. Her cells never aged, okay? And so what they were doing, they were taking human cells and they were injecting it with chemicals, trying to get a reaction in relationship so she'd be immortality, let's be clear, okay? So that's 100. And what they did in testing 225,000, they found 100 that registered above 0. One went all the way up actually to 30, which would mean if that was real, a 60-year-old become a 40-year-old. But there was a big problem. In every case, within 48 to 72 hours, when they injected the cell, the cells died, okay? Well, that all changed. So we go to Reno, we spend the whole day, and John Anderson says to them, listen, you've wasted your $36 million. They weren't happy about that. The answer's in the ground. And they said, look, we've tested natural products, including resveratrol. You know, that was the big hype a few years ago about, grape skins, total bogus. They have no impact on telomeres whatsoever, despite what Dr. Oz said. So there you go, whatever. But anyway, so at the end of the day, John Anderson says, well, you're looking in the wrong place. I mean, go to Northern California and look at the redwoods. They're 2,000 years old. And we know, I didn't know this, they were talking about it. Lobsters have no aging mechanism. They die from predators. And they've now, this is years later, they've discovered 2 or 3 species of jellyfish in the Pacific that also have no aging mechanism, okay? So anyway, John goes back to his lab. This is July 3rd, September 5th. He sends them 15 compounds, not 15. They've tested 225,000. And number 11 of the 15 registered above 0. And for the first time ever, the cells did not die. Well, I was on that phone call from the scientists, myself and John Anderson, and they said, listen, there's only two explanations here. Number one, you're the smartest person in the world, or we believe it's equivalent to winning 3 mega jackpots in one day. And so John says, stand by. 3 weeks later, he sends them 25 compounds and 5 of them registered above 0. So that was how it came about. And then so myself and Bill Andrews and John, we were the first 3 humans ever to ingest this in a capsule. Now, hell, I didn't know if I was going to grow like 11 feet tall or 2 heads. You got to Walgreens and got a prescription for a cough or something. This is crazy, right? Now, Dr. Andrews, in order to run in these ultra marathons, you have to run a qualification race once a year. He ran it in Phoenix in May when it's 100 degrees in the mountains. Of course, it was 60 miles long, and the fastest time he'd ever run was about 16 hours, okay? So he starts on this along with the detox this is September. So ironically, 9 months later, May, he goes on and runs the same race. Only this time, he runs the race in 11 hours on his 60th birthday. He cut 5 hours off his time. That was when we kind of went, you know what? This is for real. And then I was picked to go to the company and explain, look, this is a miracle. This is the biggest breakthrough ever. And of course, we couldn't make any claims because of the FDA, et cetera. But, you know, and in the months that have followed, my God, I have people with white hair that their hair turned dark. They're getting rid of their glass. I mean, it's just crazy what's going on. And so that was a major, major, major breakthrough that sort of happened by accident, that I go to this RSV reception in Chicago. It pours. Listen, if there was a rain, if the sun was out, this probably would have never happened. That's how crazy my life is with these things. So those are some of the kind of the outside things that I've worked on, and I'm very much concerned and excited about the other breakthroughs that are on the horizon as it comes to aging. So, but again, keep in mind, he was doing the detox religiously over the course of those 9 months. Please keep that in mind. So it wasn't just that he was taking this capsule, he was also doing, you know, the detox. And, you know, we can't make any medical claims, but all I can tell you is that, you know, thousands or tens of thousands of people, I've heard the stories, and they're nothing short of miraculous. All of you have something in your hands that it's kind of like, yeah, it was really impossible until it was possible. I always liken it to 350 years ago when the smartest people in the world said, what? The world's flat. Well, I actually interviewed Dr. Andrews on my television show, which I was going to sell before COVID. That's another story. And the first question I asked him, I said, you know, I really feel like, you know, you're Christopher Columbus and I'm on this damn boat with you. Are we going to sail out the end of the earth? And he laughed and said, I am Christopher Columbus and I promise we're going to come back. So that's all I can tell you. 11 years later, it's been an amazing, you know, amazing journey. And like I said, in the very, very beginning, I want you to all understand, I'm not the expert, but honest to God, when you hang around with people like that, I hope the hell you'd learn something. Because it's a lot different reading about Einstein instead of an Einstein sitting there next to you teaching you this stuff. And you got to understand, like with Dr. Andrews, I mean, they were talking like Chinese. And what I had to do was distill it down into layman's terms so that people could understand this, you know, because it's so when you talk about population genetics, I mean, I couldn't even explain to you what the hell it is, but the outcome was pretty great. So I hope that answered that, Pam. I talked a lot about it, but I think it's really important that they understand this is not just regular stuff. See, and that's the problem with some of these companies. They put out these claims, but they don't have one shred of evidence. And Bill, it's the only lab in the world that can test for the telomerase gene activity. Only one in the world. And from that original test of like 25 different compounds, they've now tested about 15 or 18,000 and have come up with stronger and stronger versions of this. But, you know, I mean, obviously I take it every single day. I mean, and I don't have 2 heads, as you can see, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe next week I will.
We feel like we've been sitting here with Einstein, Peter. We're so great, really. Love the history and the stories, and nothing's by accident for sure. You being there and each one of us being on this call, and It's very, very exciting for those of us entering to the 60s coming up to have all of this science and research that's gone ahead of us. We're really
Right.
grateful.
Do we have any questions, or
Yeah,
I'm happy
Mary
to?
had a question here.
Okay.
And she's got her hand up. Mary has had an amazing results. Went from an 18 to a 4. Blood sugars ridiculously crazy. Mary, I'm trying to unmute you. There you go. And she was like in the upper 300s, 400s, sometimes blood sugar down to normal range. She's a walking miracle. She shared last month. She has a quick question about incubating. You want to go?
Sure. Go ahead, Mary.
I'd say actually it's a combination. I never think in just one question. But anyway, one of the things that I wanted to make sure of, because I had not heard before, that to take the top off when you're incubating.
Very
So
important.
that's really, okay, I thought so.
Because
I
of
have
the
not been doing that.
oxygen. So it's the oxygenation along with the temperature, along with the time. You think about when we took chemistry in high school, we had the glass tube, we put the elements in, we added water, and we always put it over a Bunsen burner. So it makes sense. But oxygen was such an important part of everything. And if you understand about chemical, including inside our own body, the oxygen is so important for that cellular, produces the fuel, the gas for the cells. So yes, very important to take the top off and reblend it after the 45 minutes. Really important. People miss that step.
Gotcha. Okay, so that is really exciting for me, because I have gotten all of these results and I had not been doing that. So I'm going to start today with keeping that top off and reblending it. I started reblending it. There's another.
And
I
you
heard
can
of
add
another
ice.
thing.
After the 45 minutes, you can add ice.
Yeah. No, I
Okay.
didn't know that, but I haven't really needed to. But
And you can
that's
let it
another
sit for
aspect.
longer than 45 minutes if you want. It can
That was
set
what I
2
was
or
going
3
to ask
hours.
about.
Yeah, 2 or 3
Yeah, that's
hours.
what I was going to ask about.
Yeah.
So I had heard something about you could have it incubate for 2 hours, and then you could reblend it and put it into the refrigerator if you needed to wait for the next morning. Because that
Absolutely.
really helps me in the morning to be able to not have to worry about setting it
100%.
up. Okay, so that works.
Reblend it at night, yes, and then put it in the refrigerator, and then you just drink it in the morning. So people that don't have time, that's a bunch of bull. To
Right,
make a
that's really
shake, make it
helpful.
the night before,
Mhm.
and put it in the refrigerator and drink it in the morning. I mean, it can go easily 14, 15, 16 hours. And with my athletes, what I have them do, I have them blend the shake, incubate it, they take it to their workout. But for any of you athletes that are on this call, critically important part is, if you want the maximum result, you want to drink that shake with no more than 5 minutes after your workout. Ideally, if you're cooling down on the treadmill, you actually could start to drink it even on the treadmill. Now, why? Because your muscles are screaming for those amino acids. And believe
like a
me,
sponge.
like a sponge, and that deteriorates pretty quickly. So if you wait 30 minutes, you're getting maybe half the benefit that you can get. And it's simple. You're done working out. Instead of drinking water, have yourself a shake. Simple.
That's really helpful. I'm not an athlete. I have been working on my walking, so I'm moving up in those
Even after
miles.
walking, then it's fine. The same principle.
Yeah, I think I may start making a shake before I go, and then when I get back, it'll incubate it about the right amount of time. So the other question I had was, what is the difference between your protocol and the ER protocol, the ER11 protocol?
Well, my protocol is, so I don't go strict, and I'm fine with the ER protocol, but in my protocol, which is what I developed with these other people that I've worked with over 19 years, it's really based on, yes, lean proteins, but some really complex like carbohydrates and vegetables as part of it on the shake days. And so that's really the only difference. As far as the detox days, they're identical. There's no change to that whatsoever,
So it's just the addition of vegetables.
Vegetables and complex carbohydrates like, cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and, not peas and corn and carrots, no, that's not part of it.
No.
So it's really, that's the only difference. So on a shake day where you're just on ER shred, just having, the protein, I'm having them have lean proteins plus, and I've done it for 19 and a half years. And like I said, I'm very enthusiastic about ER shred, but there are some people that, they just can't eat meat all the time. So it's maybe not appropriate. So I want to have them have 2 different pathways. I don't want them not to do it because maybe they, for whatever reason, they They don't want to eat meat all the time.
I have some people who have gotten into the program that I've talked to, and then they stopped doing it because they couldn't eat that much meat.
Right.
So I'm very interested. I'm very interested in what you're saying. If there's a list somewhere of the kind of vegetables that would be those, the type that
I
would
can
be
send
good
that
for
to
you,
Pam.
that would be great.
I have what's called a recommended food list. It's a real
Oh, that
long
would be
list of tons of things. I'll be happy to share that with Pam.
That would be phenomenal, because I think I could actually, reintroduce some people
Yeah,
back
my
in.
people literally take that list to the supermarket with them and they shop off of that list.
Oh, that's phenomenal. That is phenomenal.
Not my list, by the way, again, from the geniuses that I work with, Remember, I'm the guy that didn't know what a calorie was 19 and a half years ago.
Your
This
protocol
is great.
is
Yes.
called R2M. So that's race to maintenance. So you recommend the shred and then those 2 48-hour periods of cleansing each month. Tell
They're
us
the
your
same.
maintenance after the shred, your race to
Okay,
maintenance
so
R2M.
so forget the shred. Once you've reached your goal, okay, then your minimum requirement is a shake for breakfast and always a shake as your last meal, even especially on maintenance. And then minimum, you want to do a 48-hour detox at least once a month or once every 3
Cool.
weeks or maybe every
Cool.
other week. That's the main difference. But on the detox days, they're identical to what you're doing on ER shred. There's no difference there. It's just on the let's call them shake and food days. My version is a little bit different, but I was sharing this with Pam. I've got a guy, he's 43 years old. He's 6'3". He was 360 pounds, 360. And in 30 days, he went from 360 to 290. He lost 70 pounds in 30 days and 60 inches off his body. So apparently either way it's working, I mean, a lot of ER shred is that, especially guys, they really like meat. It's just easier for them to do it. But I'm saying on our method, we've had really similar results. And then of course, with us, there are a lot of people that do ER shred for the first, let's say 11 days or maybe longer than that. Then they switch over. And actually, Pam, I've changed the name. It's really the R2M stands for race to maximum results. That really is what we're shooting for. I like that. I like that better because maintenance, that's kind of like, well, am I maintaining my car? I mean, no. Yeah. And because this is a lifestyle, that's what makes it so different. On a diet, there's a start date and an end date, and you're crossing out the days on the calendar and you're miserable. This is a lifestyle. This is a journey. There's no destination. And that's what makes it so different and sustainable. So either way you want to do it, it's fine. And I'll get that recommended food list to Pam for you.
That would be great.
Thank you.
I have one
other question over here with Josh. I want to hear from everybody that has their hands up. There's a couple people that do here, if you don't mind, and maybe
sure.
Mary, we can come back to you. But Josh has such an amazing story that just exemplifies what you're talking about. And he's going to give his 30-second version.
Go ahead.
And again, it's his story, but I hear these all the time. And then we have a couple other questions. But go ahead, Josh. Would you mind sharing with us?
Sure. So for 20 years, I had feet problems. My feet would cramp up and get real sore to where I'd have to stop walking and let them uncramp and unhurt whatever was going on. Chiropractors, nobody could figure out what it was. So the very first shred I did, that went down half. The second shred completely gone. So I can actually go mow my front yard without stopping. I used to have to stop mowing my front yard to let my feet come back to normal and be able to feel them and walk right, and then continue on. And now so far, I have not had any problems whatsoever.
That's so exciting. And that's 20 years you've dealt with that. And you also have some good weight results. Your first shred, 15 pounds, right?
Yep. The first shred, I got 14 pounds lost. The second shred, I think I did technically 7 because I gained 5 back. So.
Well, that's okay. But also the reason your pain in your feet went away, we have the markers. They're actually called biomarkers. And what they proved is that this absolutely positively, unlike any diet that's ever been tested, is lowering inflammation. And inflammation is a major contributing factor to all forms of arthritis and conditions like you had with inside your foot. So I'm not, from a scientific standpoint of view, I'm just telling you that the science backs up the result that you had. But you also understand, this is not some coincidence. This is not something you're going to go down to your local grocery store or your farmer's market and buy anything like this that produces these results that have been backed up scientifically. That's what, and you can tell I'm a nerd, I'm a nutcase. I love this stuff. And the more I learn, the more that I want to learn and share it with the world. And that's why I wanted to come on this call for Pam today to share my knowledge. I have no dog in this hunt. I'm not affiliated with Pam in any way other than we're friends. I want all of you to know that. So this is pure science that I'm coming on to share with you, to hopefully you'll be able to transfer some of this. I'm sure she recorded it. You can listen to it. And it's again, science has no emotions. So Pam, who else wants to ask me a question?
Okay, I have Michelle. I'm just asking her to unmute. She has her hand raised, and Peter has his hand raised.
Well, we want to get to Peter for sure. I'm kidding.
Yeah, yes, we have to get to your namesake.
Good. Michelle, go ahead.
Okay, hi, thanks. My question was, I don't know if anybody else is working out of the home and doing the ER shred, but what I found was really difficult for me was making the shakes at work. I can't really get away from my post to go do this stuff during the day, and it was becoming very stressful. So the fact that you just said that you could make the shakes the night before
100%.
have them for the next day,
Yep.
that automatically helps me and takes away a whole lot of stress, because
Cool.
would be a real problem on my job to be trying to manage that and work where I'm working with the general public all day.
Yeah, I work with people that work inside like these, containment labs where they're doing like high instruments and stuff, and they have the same problem. And when I told them that they could make their shake the night before, you'd think that they thought I was a saint, which I'm not. But I mean, it's just the science. It's not going to hurt anything. And again, this should be convenient in your life. It shouldn't be a deterrent. It shouldn't slow you down. So I'm really happy for you, Michelle. That's wonderful.
Okay, yeah, that's going to make that part doable. The other thing that was a problem for me was there was no way that I could do the 2 cleanse day and work. So I was like, I'm going to have to alter this schedule and do like 5 days of shakes and 2 days of,
Perfect.
of cleanse when I'm home on the weekend, because when I counted on the schedule, it's like at least 9 times between the supplement, between the cleanse and the bone broth and the tablets and the other stuff altogether, it was like 9 times during the day that I have to be doing stuff.
Yeah, but that's really important. You have to understand that's called protein pacing. It's as critical to the results as anything is that timing. And so for you to do it on the weekends, congratulations. That's again, problem solved.
Okay, now my third and last question, I had posed this to Pam, but I wanted to get your take on it. And I wanted to know if the shakes are composed of casein, because I had remembered reading some time ago that a high intake of casein causes or promotes breast cancer. And that was a problem that one of my kids' teachers had run into, and she was a vegetarian and she had recurrent breast cancer, and they had said it was in part because as a vegan she was using cheese and dairy products for most of her protein. So therefore I wanted to know if that was an issue for these shakes, if they're like full
No,
of
I probably wasn't articulate enough. When you incubate the shake independently, my colleague is one of the top oncologists in the world. Okay. And he proved in a major study with stage 4 cancer patients, the only thing he would use for them is whey protein, period. But I guess I didn't accentuate. When you incubate the shake after the 45 minutes, and he did this analysis under an electron microscope, there is no casein left. There is no whey protein left. There is no milk protein left. It's completely gone. That doesn't happen if you make it in cold water and drink it in 5 minutes. So that's a complete switch. And like I said, he's one of the top oncologists in the world. And he was giving his patients, the reason he did the analysis on our shake, he'd been using an undenatured whey protein from Switzerland when I met him. until he saw the shake. Now he recommends, he doesn't do it blatantly, but with all the cancer patients we work with, it's only that shake that he wants us to use because it doesn't have any casein. It doesn't have any whey protein, but it has massive amounts of amino acids, which those people need to help them recover. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you very much. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable about using.
Cool.
All right, Peter, thank you for your patience. Do you have your question ready to go?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Peter.
Hello. Pleasure.
Yeah.
I missed, or maybe I didn't miss. Where are you located?
Denver.
Oh, okay, great. And my questions are around the, I guess what you're calling the shake.
Yes.
And what are the dynamics to get 100 degrees? And do you have to keep it at 100 degrees?
No, you on Amazon for $4 or $5, you can buy a thermometer. You want it to start at 100 degrees. After the 45 minutes, it's going to basically be room temperature. So, and again, 100 is ideal. If it's 85, it's still okay. I'm just telling you that he ran the experiments at 100 degrees. But it doesn't mean if it was a little colder, it's not going to, but you just don't want, you don't want cold water. Then you're wasting your time. Don't incubate the shake. So the temperature, and because I'm such a purist, that's what I advise people. I say, look, all I can tell you is that and why did he do 100 degrees? Because the body's 98.6 and those enzymes thrive in that temperature. Now you could go warmer too. You could go like 110, 112.
Okay.
But
yeah, that's what I wondered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt it if you just don't go to boiling. Then you destroy the enzymes. That's bad.
Sure.
That's a bad
Sure.
thing. So does that answer
Sure.
your question?
That does on the temperature. What about adding other things with it? Like if you like have a little, pour it on some cereal,
No. God,
or
no.
if a
Oh my God,
person
no.
has a problem, pardon?
Oh my God, no. You don't
Or-
touch anything. You don't mess with
Okay.
anything in there. You will absolutely ruin the chemical transformation. It's purified water in the temperature over time. Now, after you're done, after you've incubated it, for example, if you want to have Ionic Supreme, you could actually add a scoop to it after it's incubated, remix it and drink it with it. But as far as blueberries, cereal, almond milk, anything like that, no. Zero.
Okay.
Okay.
And what about adding a sweetener to it for someone that doesn't like the taste, like adding stevia powder?
You're completely ruined it then.
Okay.
Because here's the problem with sweeteners, okay? Now remember, I just told you after the 45 minutes, it's reduced the sugar by more than 30%. So adding a sweetener back in would defeat the whole purpose because we want to have less sugar, less simple
Well,
carbohydrates.
stevia is a positive sugar even for diabetics.
I got that, but here's the way the body works. The tongue measures sweetness, okay?
Okay.
So
Yep.
whether you drink real sugar, whether it's stevia, I don't care what it is. It's called the cephalic response. When you eat, when you ingest that, the body then sends a message to the brain. It tells how much sweetness, and the body's anticipating energy. That's the problem with diet sodas, okay? And what's literally happening to people by using too much of those, the body then, the brain responds by actually having the pancreas secrete insulin when there's no need for insulin. That's why diet sodas are a major contributing factor to type 2 diabetes.
Fantastic. It all makes sense. Thank you. I just needed to ask the questions for others besides
Good.
myself
That's
as well.
what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's really great. Tough question. Do
Yes.
you have any relationship with the company that makes the shake?
Yes. But again, I'm hands off. Okay. Like in all my lectures, and if you bought my books, you'll never see the mention name of a company. I look at them as a fulfillment company. It's like I look at them like I would go to Home Depot or Lowe's to buy the raw material. But you got to understand that whether it's ER Shred or the R2M that I invented, we're using those elements to create the result. That's how I look at it.
Okay. Would you be willing to say what your relationship is with the company that manufactures it?
I'm just, I'm not really a distributor, but I make it available, and I've trained lots of people that make it available. And that really is my relationship, so I don't have any special advantage over any of you. I pay the same price, et cetera. And I've been able to, obviously leverage my scientific acumen to allow me to, look, I've done over 1,500 lectures all over the world. I've never charged a person a penny. I paid my airfare. I even rented the rooms, et cetera, because I believe that this message was so critical because it saved my life. So thank God, I've been able to leverage the financial rewards because I've worked really hard. I spent thousands of hours, right? So I look at it like being a doctor. When you go to a doctor, what do you really pay them for? Your knowledge. But you have to understand there are other things that I use other than what's in this company. That's the point I wanted to get across to you. There are other fulfillment companies. When I have someone, let's say with cancer or something there, and Pam knows this. I turned her on actually to one of my colleagues. So it's a whole different ball game, but you'll never see any written thing from me that would ever mention the name of the company. I don't do that because it would take away from my academic, credibility.
Yeah, sure. So you say you're not a distributor, but you
I
do
am.
have some
I'm a
relationship.
distributor. No, I'm a distributor in the sense that I can buy it at the lowest possible price. And then the people that I've turned on to it, who turn other people on, yes, I benefit.
Right.
I've used that money to fund
You're an associate.
an associate. That's it. Exactly.
Okay.
And
Sure.
I
Just like I am, or any anybody, any
Same.
one of us can be.
Right. I do the same thing, but as many of you who are also my wellness clients, that's not the only thing I use. I have other things I use. But it's the meal, food is your medicine. Medicine is your food. And these are some of the best foods that are available. And definitely results with my clients were speeded up so quickly by adding these protocols as part of the food. And anybody on this call can become an associate. You can either be a preferred customer, and that's fine. If you
buy
want
at the lowest possible price, even if you're just a customer. And I will say this, Peter, in my books, I lay out the generic recipes, no mention of a company. I say, look, you need an unddenatured whey protein. You need these enzymes. You need these minerals. Okay. And if people can go out and match that, for example, if you could find a shake with the 5 enzymes and put it in the warm water and let it sit for 45 minutes, the same thing would happen. Only I've never seen one with these 5 enzymes before. I've never seen one with 70 minerals. That's what I'm saying. And that's the perspective I come from to say, look, these people taught me, this is what you need. It was just coincidental that this company met all that criteria. They didn't even know it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Sean had a question, I believe. Sean, do you want to unmute yourself?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are, sir.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, nice to meet you, Mr. Greenlaw.
Nice to meet you.
I have a quick question on, I think you may have answered one of the problems I'm having. Sometimes I stall out on the fasting days. I'm a mechanical engineer and I do some pretty hairy mathematics sometimes in my head.
Got it.
And on the second day of the fast, I call it fasting stupid. I just kind of, and I am type 2 diabetic.
Okay.
I think that maybe the incubating of the shake and the warmth, I was losing some of that. But is there something I can do to keep moving forward? Because I will only do one fasting day now, and I can get through it stellarly. But the second one is really hard on me, and I am trying to get ready for the summer. I'd like to lose 40 pounds to.
Okay, well, 2 things. Number 1, if you do a 1 day, you're getting 10% of the benefit. The other thing is that this was invented by a diabetic chemist. Those little snacks for a diabetic, non-negotiable. And what's happening to you, especially on the second day, is that your blood sugar is dropping. And that's why you're having that mental, fog, whatever you want to say. Now, the first thing I would do, with my diabetics, I tell them, look, I don't care. You can have 8 or 10 or 12 of those little snacks, because what they do, they balance your blood sugar. That's what they were designed for. He's a diabetic, actually on an insulin pump. So it was critical because he invented this for himself. Wasn't intended for the public. It was just when he did it, and then he had incredible results. In 3 weeks, he lost like 45 pounds. The other option you'd have is to do the 48 hours like somebody else was telling me on their work days, then maybe you're going to have to do your detox on the weekends. But I will tell you this, honest to God, one day, it's interesting, but from a scientific standpoint of view, you're not doing very much. It's the second day. That's when all the magic occurs, because you've got to go through that process of burning through the glycogen stored in your liver. That takes about 22 hours.
Got
That's
it.
just a physical. So that's something that you may want to really address. But I really do believe if you have more snacks, it may really help you, because that symptom you're experiencing is simply a drop in blood sugar. And you know that already as a diabetic, when your blood
Yes.
sugar drops and, you know, et cetera. But understand it was developed and invented by a diabetic. That's really important.
That's super helpful.
Thank you
Oh my
very much.
God, they're non-negotiable. See, I wish I call them when I teach people, I say, those are really mini meals, because they are. There's only 30 calories, but it's got all 70 minerals. It's equivalent to like a couple thousand calories of food from a nutritional standpoint of view. So Sean, I hope that helps you. But as a diabetic, that's non-negotiable. And especially as a diabetic, you're not getting the benefits you could get by doing that second 24 hours. And I appreciate what you're telling me about the mental fog, but I also think if you up your consumption of those snacks, it could really help you.
100%. Thank you very much for the time.
All right, no worries. And I think Sandy still had a call. Somebody still had a question for me.
Does someone else have a question? Dr. Chandra, anybody else? Any questions?
I had one more, but I'm waiting to see if anybody else has a question.
I think you're it. Go for it, Mary.
You got the last one, Mary.
Okay, so when I go to work and I'm doing the shake days, the shakes
Yes.
and meat, I am not really able to do my meal for lunch because I'm a teacher and I don't have that much time to
Mhm.
be able to create that meal. So what I've been doing is I do a shake for breakfast, a shake for lunch, and then when I get home about 3:30 or 4, I just do an early dinner.
No. I'm going to tell you why. Okay.
Mhm.
So I explained to you, and there's a reason that it's bookend. There's a reason it's not shake, lunch, dinner. Okay. And here's why. And I told you, when we go to sleep, that's when the body detoxifies itself. And by
Right.
having that shake as the last meal at night, your body is going to utilize the nutrients that are in that shake, if you incubate it, especially when you're sleeping. But when you wake up in the morning, you're completely depleted of everything. That's why the shake in the morning. And so you're bookending, you're replenishing your body in the morning, and you're in essence you're creating that nutritional partitioning I was talking about when you sleep. Okay. Now, the other
Mhm.
thing you can do, okay, on my protocol, the other thing, let me be totally transparent. So instead of having like one, let's say 500 calorie meal, most of my people, I have them break that in half. They have like 250 calories at lunch, and then they have 250 or 300 calories at dinner. Now, why do I do that? Number one of the things we've learned is, and my colleague taught me this, it's called protein pacing. And by leveling out that nutrition over the course of that day, it's much more efficient way for your body to utilize the nutrients. There's nothing wrong with doing that shake at lunchtime, but it's not the way this was designed. Was shake in the morning, shake at night on a shake day, for that very reason that I explained to you, that your body's going to rely on that nutritional partitioning when you sleep to access that nutrition, but you've suspended the digestive tract. Your body, so you're not going to disturb that particular portion. And that's why on a detox day, like I was telling Sean, it's that 24 hours that determines that switch. Because that first day, all you're basically doing is burning the sugar stored in your liver, Sean, where in the second day, that's when the body turns from what's called metabolic inflexibility to metabolic flexibility. We have made the transition from relying on sugar and simple carbohydrates for fuel and now turning to fat. You never get there, Sean, if you don't continue after the 22 hours. Interesting, there's a little benefit, but no comparison. And the clinical studies prove it. They did clinical studies on a 1 day versus a 2 day. It was immeasurable, the difference. So I'm not just making this up as some sales gimmick.
Right.
I don't care. It's just the science.
Right.
So hopefully that
So-
helps you also, Sean. Go ahead.
100%.
were to-
Thank you.
Go ahead.
If I were to do the breakfast
Yes.
And then instead of having lunch at the time I would normally have it during my school day, have maybe a late lunch at about 3,
You
and
could
then
do
do the
that.
shake at night. I can do that? Okay, then that
Well, but
probably would be the
also
best
that,
thing.
but I also would say that 3 o'clock thing, you could break it into 2 smaller pieces. Because again, then I want people to think it's normal life. They then, if they want to have dinner with their significant other or whoever it might be, it's much more normal. I get much more compliance
Yeah.
with people doing this. Because psychologically, when people hear in the old days, it was shake, lunch, shake. No, no, no. Plus, having that shake too early diminishes
Right.
its impact. Does that make sense?
Right. Right.
So having that shake at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, that's ideal.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, that is helpful. So then take the normal meal that you would have if I were going to have
Break it
like
in
a 3
2.
o'clock.
Break it in 2.
Yeah, break it in 2, and then if I want to break bread with somebody, I can do that.
At 100%.
Very
Good. All right.
So that's where
Thank
that's probably where my system varies a little bit, but I get much higher compliance. You know, I've got people that have been with me for 19 and a half years. And, you know, in the early days, it was shake, meal, shake. And then people were, you know, it's too hard. I can't do it, you know, et cetera. But this is a much easier way to do it. So I'm kind of teaching you a better way to ride a bicycle.
Oh, I'm
Awesome.
loving this because I
Well, it's
can
been
see it.
an hour and a half now of your time. And I so appreciate it. I don't know, I heard somebody, Michael, did you have one last question?
Very quick question about the incubation and adding something like Bravo to it.
Yes. Okay. If you're talking about Bravo now, the capsule, you want to put it in and incubate it with the shake in the warm water. You do that. And then, and with Bravo, it's only 2 capsules a day, AM and PM in each shake. That is fine. And then let me tell you this, Michael, when you put the Bravo in there, which I have nothing to do with it. So I don't make any money on it. It's not it. But when you do that, Michael, 100% of the sugar is gone.
Okay, and so 1 capsule in the morning shake, 1 capsule in the evening shake.
And you incubate it you open the capsule, put it in there.
Right.
Mix the shake, let it sit for the 45 minutes. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
And if anybody wants to know about that, you've got my email or my text, let me know. I want to just give a little plug. This was a long call, lots of wonderful, rich information. If you want just a really quick overview, Peter has Windy City. You can go on YouTube, and he did Why Diets Are Failing Us. There's 2 little 5 or 6 minute, you know, number 1 and number 2. It's a great synopsis. Again, Windy City. Peter, do you have any other ones that you can send them to that are quick?
No, that's it. Windy sees my sort of the one that it's a go-to. I've had, I don't know, 500,000 downloads or whatever. It's crazy.
Yeah, hopefully you'll get some kickbacks from that.
Yeah.
YouTube.
And of course, all of you, shameless plug for me, my books are on Amazon, you know,
Yes.
just, I hope some of you will buy them because like I said, it's a labor of love of 19 and a half years, and sharing all this knowledge in written form is you know, very gratifying, especially our last book called Your Third Brain. I'm telling you, it'll blow your
Powerful.
minds.
It's powerful. I'm going to end with one quote. And I think sometimes the task seems enormous, but we all know we break it into daily steps. But I think really we underestimate the power of just hope. Like Peter being in that room, it being expectant, positively expectant. Look what happened. Somehow I got to meet Peter. Look what's happened. And I want to encourage you with that little quote here. Hope is not blind optimism. It's not ignoring the enormity of the task ahead or the roadblocks that may stand in our path. It's not sitting on the sidelines or shirking from a fight. Hope is that thing inside us that insists, despite any evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us if we have the courage to reach for it, to work for it, and to fight for it. Hope is the belief that destiny won't be written for us, but by us, by the men and women who are not content to settle for the world as it is, who have the courage to remake the world as it should be. And I know you guys are all wonderful world changers. And bless you, Peter. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope it was beneficial to everyone. So everybody have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Super
Thank you.
fantastic. Thank you so much. What an
Sure.
honor.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you again.
Thank you.